Well, I'm very pleased for Michael Adams that he's managed to take a game off Magnus Carlsen. He had a setback versus Sokolov in an earlier round, facing Carlsen, who he's lost to I think at least twice before. He had the white pieces for a change though. I think he's lost with the black pieces before. So he kicked off with E4. Carlsen played G6. So Carlsen, who's rated at the moment, is 2826. So that's almost 100 FIDE points higher than Adams, who's 2728. So 98 points. So D4 Knight F6, already some provocation and interesting opening choice by Magnus. So what is this? It looks like a kind of cross between the Alekhine's defense and a perk. Okay, so Adams played E5. So unlike the Alekhine's, the knight's not going here though. It's able to be supported by that pawn which has just moved to G6 to play H5 as an option. So we see, what is this terrible evil hybrid concoction which Carlsen's prepared against poor Adams. So bishop E2, and another idea is revealed here to play D6. Very unusual opening. I haven't seen this for a while. Okay, so Adams plays it as though he's playing just for a solid small advantage, just playing knight F3. He's not trying to punish that knight too much. It's going to need time to get back into the game. They say a knight on the rim is dim, but if you're 2800, I think you know when to break the rules and play moves in context of the position. So after knight C6, black obviously is trying to undermine white's pawn chain in the centre, and bishop G7 will be further putting pressure on these two pawns. So E takes D6 was played, and now after E takes D6, Adams cements, in my view, a small positional advantage with this next move. He plays D5. Easy to say in hindsight, of course, biased by knowing the game result, but it looks as though, you know, with white conquering the D4 square, this looks like one of those classic Fischer games against the Alekhine's defence, where Fischer was content with a small but solid advantage. So knight E7 was played, and now C4. So black still has this problem, you know, what to do with this knight. Carlsen plays bishop G7, and after knight C3, black castles and white castles. If black can control the E5 square and the semi-open E file, the prospects will start to be looking much better. In this respect, Carlsen plays bishop G4, which I think does undermine white's control of the dark squares. After rook E1, rook E8, and now H3. So gaining that light squared bishop must give white an advantage in this particular position, because at the moment it seems black's pieces are quite distant for overprotecting the E5 square. So bishop F3, knight F6. Okay, the knight's rerouting, and you know, maybe black's close to equalising here. If he can get good counterplay going on the dark squares. Bishop F4, now knight D7. So all this rerouting, the knight was dim, and now with this rerouting is eyeing that sensitive E5 square. Okay, rook C1, now knight E5. So obviously hitting the C4 pawn and the F3 bishop. Adams doesn't mind about losing that F3 bishop. He plays actually B3, just protecting the pawn. And now A6, as though, you know, black might consider B5 in the future. Also, you know, maybe it's to prevent knight B5 as well. So G3 is now played, again offering that light squared bishop, but it's not taken. Carlsen plays knight F5, and now bishop G2, safely tucking away that bishop. But is it going to be bad behind this pawn? That's the question. An unusual move now, which confused me a bit, that Carlsen played. Okay, he's got a dark square strategy to emphasise these dark square weaknesses, and part of that is undermining white's control of the E5 square. So it seems logical from one perspective, but from another perspective it seems slightly risky and controversial. So Carlsen played the move G5. Now I wonder if you agree with me, just intuitively, that, you know, this diagonal is potentially going to be weaker. Obviously, it's easy to say in hindsight for the result of the game, the bias of knowing the result of the game. But g5 does weaken the light squares, and black hasn't got a light squared bishop. These are very simple things to comment, and really you need, the concrete refutation. And to show this up, how is white going to strengthen his control of this diagonal? So we're going to see this over the next few moves, though. Adams first plays bishop takes e5. So he's eliminating that horrible knight, but he's giving black potentially, good counterplay on the dark squares now, with this dark square bishop not having any counterpart in the white position now. So potentially, there's a rampant attack, in theory, if black can arrange pressure on the dark squares. But knight e4 immediately picks on that g5 pawn. So potentially white's going to now play queen d2 and force a further concession, another pawn move from black. So knight g7 was played here, maybe with the idea of f5 and f4. It does unblock the f pawn. So queen d2, they're attacking g5 immediately. h6, so these light square weaknesses, in theory they're getting a bit worse now with h6 and g5. And Adams plays a very interesting aggressive move now, potentially weakening his king position, but actually he's factored in that black's king position is potentially going to be even weaker than his. So f4. So after g takes, we see a radical change in pawn structure. Can white use this semi-open g file? That's the major question now. Bishop f6. So to do that, he's going to have to move his king, and he moves his king now. So there's a simple idea of just rook g1 at some point. But what of this weakness, this f4 weakness? Carlsen picks up on that and plays knight h5. So there's an immediate threat of knight f4, queen f4, bishop e5, nasty skewer on the white king. But rook g1 was played here. So why doesn't knight takes f4 work in this position? That's the question. Carlsen actually played king h7. I assume it's something to do with the g file. Okay, so knight takes f4. Let's have a quick look at knight takes f4. So we're saying if queen takes f4, there's bishop e5. Okay, let's put this into an engine, because I can't see immediately what the problem is tactically which is going on here. So loading up Ribka. Okay, knight takes f6 apparently, queen takes f6, and now look, rook c f1. So just using that horrible pin against the queen. And if black tries like rook e2, then there's queen takes e2. So it's picking up material. So that's the reason why. Engine off. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Spock. Okay, so knight takes f4 is not possible. So Carlsen played king h7. And now finally the pawn has to be protected. See rook to f1. Now rook g8. Now queen e2. So starting to betray these weaknesses in the black position on the light squares. After knight g7, Adams plays another queen move, and he's been doing this in the British Championship, these mysterious queen moves, and they seem to be devastating after just 2 or 3 sometimes. And this game is actually no different, even against the 2800 opponents. It's amazing, just some subtle queen moves causes collapse sometimes. So king h8, but the queen is fundamentally where it wants to be on this weak diagonal. Bishop f3, and now this is a lovely manoeuvre. So this bishop, which at the moment there is just sitting behind its own pawn chain, is potentially coming like this on that sensitive diagonal. Carlsen lashes out with b5. Okay, if he can weaken this structure, there's going to be some counterplay. He's lacking in counterplay here, a bit of congestion. And faced with this horrible plan, he has to do something fairly quickly. But bishop d1, bc4, bc4. Now bishop h4. So it looks like Carlsen's in a difficult position, struggling to find a plan, and Adams is systematically lining up the troops now, so the battery's been lined up against that sensitive H7 square. So this isn't the most subtle positional masterpiece I've ever seen in my life, but rather it seems just very logical attacking play on this weakened diagonal. Maybe black was asking for it, but we see now a real 2700 plus move after f5. So I think most of us would have just retreated the knight rather meekly, or played like maybe knight g3 or knight c3. Okay, but can you guess what Adams played here if I give you 10 seconds starting from now? Adams played, believe it or not, rook g6. So let's see, why is this knight immune? If f takes, queen takes, is there really no defence? I think let's ask the engine here. there's an immediate threat of rook takes h6 check. In fact, pardon me, rook g6 is actually threatening a mate in one with rook takes h6. No need for an engine check there. Okay, so f takes, rook takes h6 check. Just to confirm that, my sanity, yes, rook takes h6 is actually a mate threat because of this awkward knight hemming in the king. So king h7, engine off, and now rook f g1. So another nice battery. So there's two batteries going on now, one on the diagonal and one on the g file. Very powerful play, just intensifying pressure. Now if f takes here, maybe this is finally a bit more subtle. Queen takes, probably not much more subtle. King h8, rook h6 is mate again. And what can black do against just moving the rook next move? It looks pretty devastating, that position. So the diagonal has to be kept blockaded with that pawn. So queen e7 was played. And now Adams picks on f5. He plays the move knight g3. But I suppose one of the points of this bishop h4 earlier was to be able to take off that knight. So bishop takes g3 now. And now queen takes g3. So we've got a treble battery on the g file against g7. But it seems as though, you know, maybe black's okay here. But the rude awakening in this position started with this next move from Adams, which isn't an explosive move. I'm going to give you a clue. Can you spot this next move? So not an explosive combinatory type move as you'd expect in this kind of position, but preparation for it, which is just as important. So can you find this first preparation move if I give you 10 seconds starting from now? Okay, bishop d1. So eyeing that h5 square in preparation for a nasty, I don't want to give you too much of a clue, I've already given you a clue. I'll let you find it in this position. Adams to play. What does he play here? 10 seconds. Okay. If you were tempted by queen h4, maybe black can survive with queen takes g6. I'm not engine checking that, but there's two rooks for the queen, and maybe that was the idea, a little trap. But instead, Adams didn't go for that, which might have been a little trap set. He just played rook takes h6, and Carlsen just resigned. So why did Carlsen resign here? King takes, there's queen g5 check. Forget queen h4, because then maybe, you know, knight h5. Queen g5. Make sure that h5 is a bit weaker now, the king's not protecting it, and now, and only now, go to h4. So if knight h5, bishop takes h5, and thankfully there's no rook e2 check because bishop takes e2 discovered check. There's no rook takes g1 with check, which means bishop takes f7 next and winning the rook. So this is absolutely crushing. If say queen e7,